Buckle up, it's election speculation time. The Ontario government is fast-tracking its plan to make alcohol available in gas stations and corner stores across the province. Doug Ford says the deal to get beer, wine and ready-made cocktails into retailers by September will cost $225 million. But documents obtained by our CBC colleagues at Queen's Park show the province could face a net revenue loss of $150 to $200 million per year. All of this has led to speculation. Ford is moving up the alcohol policy ahead of a snap election. Here is how that played out in question period at Queen's Park today.
Last week's press conference sounded like a lot of a campaign launch to me, Speaker. This Premier is spending $225 million to expand alcohol sales while hospitals in Northern Ontario continue to struggle with inadequate funding from this government.
What we're doing, we're going to see new revenues of $895 million to $1.16 billion. That's hundreds of millions of dollars that we can put towards health care.
But Ontario Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie characterized Ford's plan and motivation in a very different way.
It's a billion-dollar booze boondoggle. Doug Ford has shown time and time again that he's in office to cater to his wealthy, well-connected, insider friends at the expense of the people of Ontario.
So, could Ontarians be in for an early election call? The Power Panel is with me. Kate Harrison, Jason Markisoff, Françoise Boivin, and Michelle Caderio. Kate, I am going to start with you. We want to give our friends at the Toronto Star credit here because they were the ones who first reported on this idea of an early election, quoting one source who said it would make sense for Doug Ford to pull the plug before a possible federal election puts Pierre Poilievre in PMO. I'm sure your phone has been blowing up over this one. You think there's merit to that idea?
I think there is merit. I think there's a couple factors here, and I want to disclose that our company does work with the Convenience Stores Association that has been lobbying for alcohol expansion and modernization. But I'll focus kind of on the election speculation piece. I think that there is merit. I don't think it's necessarily in fear of a Pierre Poilievre PMO. I think it might be looking actually to capitalize on, I would say, more of a pro-conservative kind of movement that we're seeing nationally now. You've seen in BC, for example, Conservatives tick up in the polls. There's been a number of by-elections at the provincial level where Conservatives have kind of upset. So I think that there is a bit of a reorientation in terms of kind of a move more to the right. You see it kind of globally as well. So I think there's merit there. On the flip side, there are a number of things that Ford still needs to achieve as a part of his mandate that is going to take quite a bit of time. Highway 413 comes to mind. I think that this is probably more about playing with the opposition than it is about entertaining it truly right now. I do think there's merit to, perhaps depending on how the economy looks sometime next year, kind of seize upon a strong economy, seize upon the Liberals and the NDP being nowhere right now. Ford enjoys considerable support. I think it's worth considering, but I don't know how real that is right now.
Okay. Françoise, it's interesting. The Star piece in particular talked about a few different ideas. One, that Poilievre was, he sort of made the point that he's going to crack the whip, I guess, a bit on issues like housing, but also that there could be challenges for provincial governments that were counting on funding for particular things that may not see it there anymore. But also that old theory that Canadians tend to want one party in power provincially and another one federally. So is there merit, do you think, to this idea of making a go for it before Poilievre might get into federal office?
I mean, at first, when I read the article, I was kind of surprised because the next election is supposed to be in 2026, and we're already talking Ontario election in 2024. I was kind of in shock. During the show that I do every day, Monday to Thursday, Dimitri Soudas, who sometimes is more connected with the Conservatives than I can be, was telling us that he was not surprised. He had made a few phone calls, and from what he was hearing, and I'm just repeating, so it's totally hearsay, that he was even seeing it as fast as August 2024, which means barely 2 years into their mandate. And when you base it, and one of his arguments that I'm now making mine is like you were saying, the fact that usually Ontarians don't like to have a conservative government federally and a conservative government provincially. So that might be a bit in the equation, saying, "I will be the first to be elected for another 4 years. And Poilievre, well, we'll see if he gets elected. Well, we'll break the good old tradition. So that could be one thing. Also, very seriously, and that's more my take, the fact that he knows Pierre Poilievre, he knows what he's going to, for all the things that he's saying that he's going to do, that it will have an impact on Ontario. He doesn't want to suffer the brunt of it, and that would be a smart way. Plus the fact that maybe the other two parties, the Liberal and the NDP in Ontario, maybe their leaders are not yet known enough to be quite the competition. Probably will be more in a year and a half time from now on. So it might be interesting to see if it does happen. And plus the fact that his bill on alcohol, maybe when they'll see at the next budget that they have a bit less revenue, maybe that will come back to bite him, where. So all things, and I should have so much disclosed the fact that I do drink alcohol sometimes.
As long as you're not drinking right now, Françoise, we're fine.
No, I'm not. Solely coffee.
I will say, if anyone wants to impress their friends at cocktail parties, the Underhill balance theory is the Fed-Prov balance theory there. Jason, the flip side of this argument is you go into an election too early. You can be punished by the electorate for seeming a little bit too craven in your desire to win the next election. Do you think that ought to play into the calculation here?
If we do that, I think you'll hear from here till that voting day references to 1990 and when David Peterson, the Liberal Premier at the time in Ontario, called an election early, hoping to take advantage of an even bigger lead than Doug Ford has right now. And well, that's how Ontario got its one-term NDP government. Bob Rae won that election in a surprise. It actually happened in Alberta here too. Jim Prentice, the late PC premier, thought he could go early, take advantage of a split right wing and left wing, and that's how the NDP government won here as well. So those memories will be high, but there are a lot of advantages and a lot of reasons why he might be thinking of yet another example, the 2000 Jean Chrétien majority, where he wanted to take advantage of Stockwell Day as a new alliance leader, and he got his third majority as well. A lot of arguments for him in that might overwhelm for him the argument about the election being too early. In addition to what everybody else says, there's also the threat that there could be greenbelt charges, or as the RCMP investigates that scandal, and if he wants to get ahead of that. There could be a point in the future, a year from now, 2 years from now, when progressive voters in the party, especially if they wait too long and see how the Liberal and NDP vote shakes out federally, where people say, well, we should decide between Marit Stiles and Bonnie Crombie. That clearly hasn't happened in the time that they've been leader, but it could happen, and surely Doug Ford is going to be mindful of that. What's striking about the idea about going quickly and using this convenience store thing as a launch board for that is, yes, come the fall, people would see the beer and cocktails in their favorite liquor store or favorite convenience store, but they'll also see these threats that you hear the opposition parties using, that this $225 million subsidy to fast track this could have gone to the hospitals. And if they go in the fall, none of this budgetary advantage would show up in tax revenue.
Yeah, billion-dollar booze boondoggle. Who doesn't love some alliteration? It's actually a little bit reminiscent of Pierre Poilievre. Michelle, I wonder, do you think that the easier accessibility of alcohol is really that big of a motivator for people's votes?
Well, I know it's hugely popular. I will confess that I helped to lead the overhaul of the BC Liquor Reform Act, and we did quite a bit of polling on that. We got a lot of community input, and overwhelmingly, especially with women, the convenience of being able to pick up a bottle of wine for dinner and put it in the same cart as your lettuce and not have to make a second stop, repark your car somewhere, find parking somewhere, all of that kind of stuff, overwhelming. And, $225 million, yes, it is a lot of money, but it doesn't really resonate with people because a lot of it is actually, it's lost revenue that is going to go to smaller businesses, hopefully. And to, so I'm a huge proponent of that. I do not for a second understand why, trying to stand up against this is the way that the opposition is going, and giving him more of a platform on such a absolutely broad popular issue. Okay. On the subject of an election, though, I think Jason hit the bingo card. It is all about the Greenbelt. They are worried about the police investigation, and if they go early, then they have a sniff that this is going to go the wrong way, and they want to beat the police investigation from coming out. Because, the only thing that has actually in any way dented Doug Ford's credibility over the last number of years is that Greenbelt issue. It's the only thing where he had to do a full backtrack. He lost a minister over it. And it's not over. It was just resurfaced with, these reports about emails, but that allows the public to relitigate the issue, and it's a reminder again about all the special privileges that he gave to his special friends. And I think that more than anything else, yes, the polls are in the right place. Booze is a popular policy thing. The opposition is unorganized, but self-preservation mode. Most importantly, you want to beat the police investigation. And I think that that's forefront of his mind.
Kate, it's so interesting that we are, perhaps about a year and a half out from a federal election, and yet this possibility of a Poilievre government is real enough that we're seeing strategy like this being floated in the pages of the Toronto Star. I wonder if you just have any reflections on implications more broadly for a Poilievre government when it comes to Fed-Prov relations, whether it's anyone else who might want to consider an election or just what that relationship might look like.
Yeah, I would observe that Doug Ford has worked pretty well with the current Liberal government to get some things done. I think that he would bring that same kind of deal-making mentality to working with a Poilievre government.
There's not a lot of love lost, though, necessarily between the two
I
parties.
think that they've probably got a different approach to governing, certainly. Governing for Canada is also very different than governing for the province of Ontario, which is typically a little bit more centrist in terms of their approach. So I think they're very different people. Their approach to governing is different. But when you look at some of the key issues, I'm thinking about like getting people moving, and perhaps the approach even to something like safe supply, which Doug Ford has weighed in on with respect to Toronto's proposal. I think that there's more common ground there, perhaps even than what we're seeing with the current Liberal government. So Ontario is too kind of vote-rich and sensitive for either of those leaders to kind of forego doing work with one another. At a very logistical level, I do wonder what a potential fall 2025 federal election would mean for, a provincial election slated right now for June 2026. Voter fatigue, volunteer fatigue, like there's a lot of overlap there, and then, municipal that fall. So there's a lot of elections in a really short period of time that might have some kind of consequence for how parties go about organizing and supporting one another.
Jason, I'll give perhaps the last thought to you about whether you want to weigh in on more broadly Fed-Prov relations under a potential Poilievre PMO, or just sort of how that prospect is being looked at in Alberta politics.
And I mean, gosh, we love our Fed-Prov relations here.
It's almost a tagline, power in politics.
Yeah, exactly. We're very into it. I mean, and with Smith in some ways would love to have a Poilievre government, a Conservative government, much more friendly in a lot of terms. But we've actually seen some polling numbers that suggest that maybe it'd be better. It's better off with the Liberal government in power. It's a great whipping post for her. It's one of their most popular priorities, and it seems that while with Trudeau in power, people aren't blaming Danielle Smith and her UCP government for issues like housing and affordability. If that goes, and if they see that things haven't improved under a Poilievre government, will people start looking at casting their blame to Danielle Smith when she doesn't have this big bad Liberal government to complain? And that I don't know to the extent to which that'll compare in Ontario, but it well could.
Election speculation and Fed-Prov relations. I think we ticked off a lot on the marriage. The power in politics, the Ottawa politics bingo card. We'll save that for the next Power Panel. Thank you all so much for your insights today. The Power Panel today, Michelle Caderio, Françoise Boivin, Jason Markusoff, and Kate Harrison.